Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show, all things automotive. Rule number one, turn off volume on your cell phone. Your favorite automotive show where we talk about all things automotive, variable ops, fixed ops, even the office, and it doesn't really matter. The better we all get at what we do, the better we're perceived by the customer. They have a good experience at my dealership and they go to your dealership, they're expecting a good experience and vice versa. So we all help each other get better. And every week we bring on the experts to share with us what they do and how they make others successful. And I'm excited because last week we had a great show all about the BDC. We had so much material to cover, we couldn't cover it all. So what do you do when you can't get it all into one? Have a sequel. So welcome back, my guests. Thank you very much for being on the show. Before we get started, for those of you that might not know you or who are here for the first time, please tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into the car business and what brought you here today. Reid, take it away, man.
Well, as I've said before, I started 23 years ago when I was 20 years old in the car business. I had such a great success at selling. They thought that when they could start printing out the internet leads, they'd hand them over to me. So I started working those. I did such a great job doing that. They moved me up into management. But I really found a gap when it came to BDC and process and lead management. So I really tried to master my craft when it came to that. And what motivates me, and Wendy said it last show, the most important thing is the aha moment. It's the aha moments I've had in my life that I can look back at that have made me turn direction and change my life. So I like to be able to help people have those, especially in the BDC.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Wendy Reeves, welcome back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really happy to be back here with all of you again this week. I have been in the car business. I started out when I was 16 years old as a part-time night receptionist when I was in high school. My dad was a car guy. And I have been in and out, tried to stay out, couldn't stay out. Once you're in it, you're in it for life, I think. And I started in the back of the house. I did practically every position there. And went back into 06 into internet sales and opened my first BDC at a long time dealership that I worked for in my hometown for probably on and off for 30 years. BDC in April of 07 was when we first started it. And my passion has been BDC, like Reid said, like aha moments. I said kind of in reference to our students, which is another exciting thing, but my own, to say what Reid said, my own aha moment, I think, too, is realizing how passionate I am about BDCs. I love to get in the phones. I love to be in the trenches when I'm teaching other people, either remotely or in person. I love to sell the value, to learn the value and sell the value and the culture of the various dealers that we work with. And watching our students and those aha moments that they have as they realize little by little that there is a method to our madness, and it's absolutely a mad world the BDC world is. And I can't think of anything I'd rather do, honestly. So thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Shawn, take it away, my friend.
Yes, thank you. Like everybody else, super happy to be here. Part two. That's a good sign. So going on 20 years, actually 21 years this year in the BDC. My trajectory was a little bit different. Like many people, I got into the business by accident many moons ago. It was supposed to be an in-between job, so I was actually washing cars at the service drive, and 21 years later, here I am, right? So my first 11 years were really actually spent in the service lane. So I pinballed off of washer to jockey or porter, as you would call them, because I'm here in Montreal, Canada, so we call them jockeys. But so appointments, the cash, parts, I basically did everything. And I really, I'm really curious by nature. I'm very bold. I want to learn a lot of things. So I always understood that where you currently are is the opportunity. You know, when I was a washer, I didn't see myself as a washer. You know, I saw myself as, look, I'm a washer now, but look at what I have access to. You know, I have access to the techs, and the techs are just a wealth of knowledge with regards to, okay, well, what is the brake service? When is it due? When is it required? What is the millimeters at which you change shocks every day? And they'll tell you. They used to shush me away, and when I was doing you know, the cash and the reception, instead of just sitting there and waiting for the next customer, mark my words, I was literally studying operation codes and time. And that's really where I understood that we're in the business of selling time over at the service. So later on, tested out some used car, new car, didn't really like it. So I went back to on the phones doing appointments. And then I stumbled on this thing called the BDC. And at the time I was with that group 7 years, and it kind of just, when I went into it, it was just like an amalgamation of everything, almost like everything that I've done. And I just thought it was so cool. So to be able to clearly articulate the guest experience over the phone based on my experience, like what's the expectation? Like all too often, and I'm going off here, but all too often when we're calling to confirm an appointment for service, you know, we forget to tell them, like, when you come in, park here or go there or wait for. So anyway, I was just I just fell in love with the car industry, and essentially I started my own consulting firm. And I just felt, you know, at the root of it, basically I assist dealerships in becoming autonomous, generating revenue generating BDCs, what I like to build with them. I assist. And ultimately what I'm really trying to do, especially with shows like this and like Wendy and Reid and Stan and you, like what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to, I guess you could say, interject a path of legitimacy to the BDC. You know, once and for all, because all too often we're like this mystical department in the corner somewhere, in the corner of the dealership, next to the storage unit, next to the mop. At least that's where I was with the boxes. So I just want to legitimize the BDC as the hub of the organization. So I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And my brother from another mother, Stan Sher from New Jersey, in the house.
So glad to be here. I'm looking forward to part 2 of this show. So I'm in the business 19 years this year. Started out at 20 years old while going to college to be a school teacher. Was working 3 jobs, lifeguarding and teaching swimming lessons, and wanted to get into a career that allowed me to dress for success. And it was time to stop being a pool boy. And I essentially got a job selling cars and got really good at it really quick, to the point where my grades started to really dwindle down to C's and D's, because I just was more focused on making money. And I ended up dropping out of school and becoming a manager by 23, and got really into internet and BDC sales. Back then I was originally selling cars on the showroom floor, but then ended up selling cars in the internet department, where we did everything from cradle to grave, from start to finish, and did really well with that. Worked for AutoNation, worked for DCH, ended up running a really big internet department for a huge Honda store that sold over 400 cars a month. Got a little bit on the vendor side of things. Later on, got to build and run a BDC for a major Nissan dealership in New York. And from there, started training back in 2011. Worked for a training company for a bit and just started dealery training, and traveled the country, spoke at conferences, wrote my book not long ago, if anybody could see it, Social Shares, The Skills That Pay the Bills. I got into other things outside of internet sales and BDC and training. I got a credit repair business, I have a social media business. So basically, what I love about the industry is the industry allowed me to build a lot of different skill sets so that I could never go broke, so that I can continue to hustle and make a living and make a difference in people's lives. So I am excited to be amongst all these people. We got a lot of really great professionals here with a lot of really great ideas as to how this works.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. I want to acknowledge a couple of guests on here. We got Paul Fournier Jr. is excited, and Andy Papenhagen. Looking forward to part 2. Russell B. Hill. Good evening, everyone. And Eric, I'm never going to get your last name right, Eric. So I'm just going to say Eric from the SDL crew, Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern. Bunch of people get together and we talk about service drive and all kinds of service related stuff. So make sure you connect with Eric or Joe Chambers and get that link. every Sunday. Great bunch of people. Russell B. Hill says, me too. And Robert Allen Carvel, hello from Atlanta, Georgia. Mark Williamson, good evening, everyone. And Robert Allen Carvel says, glad to be here for part 2. Stephen Rosler, good crew here. Thank you. And Timothy Wilson, hi, everyone. Russell says, love it, Shawn. And Eric, he called you Canada Shawn. Great stuff. Ian Nethercott.
No pressure. No pressure.
Thanks for the great show. All right, so welcome. So last week we got into a little bit of conversation about staffing. You know, how do you staff it? Is it internal? Is it outsourced? We covered some of that. We also talked about everybody's favorite part in the car business, known as accountability. And that is not always there. So what I'd like to get started with is, and we also talked about, you know, who oversees the department. But let's talk about, so we've established that the BDC doesn't always get the love that we feel it should get. We being everybody that's involved with it. So let's talk about the connection between the BDC and the sales department and the BDC and the service department. You know, what are some of the best practices between, and we could start sales first or service first, doesn't really matter. You know, the product, so to speak, is different, but the people are the same. Reid, what are you seeing as some of the best practices in bridging the gap, if you will, between departments?
Well, I guess the best practice that I would suggest as far as the gap between sales managers and the BDM would be, you know, that the sales managers would get more actively involved. And like Wendy had mentioned last time, is making sure that we're steering the ship on the hour, you know, not at the end of the day. So, you know, when I worked and got an opportunity to see Hudeberg Chevrolet, they had their power hour, their make a deal meeting. And in that meeting, it's so crazy. I've trained, you know, like I said, I've been in 55 stores since 15. And one of the biggest aha moments sales managers or general sales managers have is that they're like, why didn't we include internet leads in that meeting?
You know, you're right about that. We rarely heard about that.
Yeah. Or I mean, for that matter, if you're even tracking how many phone ups you get. So, you know, I guess Sean Bradley at this point with this, you know, dealer synergy type situation, I think the synergistic part of it would be, again, the involvement from management, because when managers get involved, that's what makes car deals. So knowing what's being said in that room, you know, it is very important for the sales side to know what the BDC is saying to the customer, so that way they can meet the expectation that the customer is expecting when they get there. If you set
the expectation, there's less apprehension because we all know what the next step is. It's that fear of the unknown where we're going into something. It may be second nature for us because we live there, right. But to somebody that comes in once a year, maybe, or twice a year, if they drive a little bit more, it's a whole different place. It's a foreign land to them. So spelling it out takes away that fear. Take away the fear, you're more receptive.
And as far as the service goes, I don't know how much engagement the BDC really needs to have. I think that the speed, again, of the room is the speed of the leader. I think the BDM needs to dictate that pace. They should communicate with their staff. Like the BDM's not going to go down and start talking to the advisors and the technicians about work that needs to get done. He should go speak with the service manager or the service director. I think that's where the communication should stay, you know, manager to manager. The only thing that that communication should be as simple as, hey, I need this amount of appointments, because really the shop should be set up, you know, whether it be an X time or time highway, the hour dictate, the schedule should be already set up so that the BDC knows when they can schedule, what they can't. And if there's any updates based off of whether there's parts availability or not on a recall, that should be on the board. So, you know, limited communication, but involvement, you know?
Okay, but the right communication from the head down, right?
Yes.
The delegation, management by delegation, and keeping the conversations the right way and accountable by doing it that way. Wendy, what are your thoughts?
In the service area or sales?
Either one.
Okay, well, sales is what I work with more. I mean, service, I completely agree with you, 100%. Especially early on in a launch, you have to make sure that your BDC agents know exactly how much time or how many oil changes, for example, they can book within what time periods, what hours of the day, days of the week. Make sure you're not doing it on lunch hour. Make sure that off times, et cetera, are easily and regularly communicated, so one hand knows what the other one's doing. Sales, I think that, you know what my big thing is, honestly, that came back at me, and it's been a struggle for me for the last 12 years at least that I've been out launching on-site BDCs, and I'm surprised that we're not getting better at it because there's such a push in digital marketing now. We do not have the sales department and the BDC advertising the same message. And whatever message we're delivering, like we have these made up sales or this or that, as opposed to knowing what digital marketing we have out there. It used to be years ago, you saw the newspaper ad and okay, yeah, this is what our ad looks like. So this is the ad leader. This is what they're going to ask for, blah, blah, blah. So much time is spent on digital marketing nowadays, especially post-COVID, but we're not lining up and giving equal communication to our customers. We're not delivering we're not projecting the same dealership experience. We're not, like we talk about active listening. When a customer comes to us, it's important to realize the marketing source that drove them to us as a BDC or a walk-in, right? So yeah, we have to make sure that that's noted everywhere. We have to make sure when we launch new digital campaigns or paper campaigns or direct mailers or whatever, both teams launch it together so that the entire dealership, everybody who touches a dealership phone should know what the current campaigns are. And that to me is something that I think we need a lot of work on. So I'm not just gonna say what's really going well now. That to me is what I noticed again this week. We need to fix.
So the communication or lack thereof.
Communication. Yeah.
I remember fondly in the meeting room, the big Sunday slickers always taped up or pinned up to the walls, and yeah, I guess when we lost that, we didn't get really a replacement for it. So that's an interesting point. I want to get to a couple of comments. Robert Allen Carvel, a well-run BDC can really help the service department. Communication is key between BDC and the service department. Communication is key between all departments, but right on, Robert. And speaking of right on, Russell says, right on, Stan. He liked your story, man. And my good friend, the Laminator, otherwise known as Robert Sebastian, says, hello, everyone. And Ian Nethercott says, my pleasure. Hashtag Auto Hub Show. They have a show also, so check them out on LinkedIn and Facebook. Dominic Seguin says, great show with the fire emoji. And my friend from the West Coast, Michael Weldon, says, good evening. Now, Robert says, I see at my visits the BDC not communicating with the service department and overbooking the service appointments. That goes right to what you just said about knowing what can and can't be scheduled. I think you all touched on that. So yeah, that's a very important because let's face it, the zero moment of truth is when that customer steps into the drive or the store, and if you haven't properly accounted for the time they're going to spend there, it's going to be a problem. And Greg Dudley says, what does everyone think about the entire dealership should be the BDC? Yeah, absolutely. Shawn, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more intense when we're looking with regards to how to, align the initiatives of the BDC with the dealership. With regards to that, we threw on a word before, and it's called accountability. Like, let's call a spade for a second. It's called accountability. Okay, if you're a BDC manager, if you're a BDC team leader, Okay. You are basically in charge of a sub business unit. It's a business within a business. So the
Yeah.
first thing, act like it, right? So what I would say first would be to understand your BDC. If you want a seat at the table, you have to earn it, right? And all too often, because I've been setting up BDCs here in Canada for some of Canada's largest dealer groups, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And from the dealerships that I'm dealing with in the States as well, there's a commonality. And I think the biggest problem, outside of communication, of course, but I think that the biggest problem, if you ask me, in my opinion, is that we solve problems at the results level. But the problem with that is that it's momentarily. I'm of the opinion that if you really want to make a consistent impact, you need to change things at a systems level. Things are systems. The BDC is a system. The sales is a system. The service drive is a system. So in order to align all of them, you got to make sure that your house is in order. Now, exactly like a few little tidbits of what, like Wendy was saying, constantly coaching your BDC every single day, whether it's listening to calls, role playing, like Reid says, every hour, check on it. I mean, there's a broad spectrum of things that we can do, which is the coolest part. There's a broad spectrum of things to do. So if the BDC is not necessarily where somebody wants it to be, you got to look into the mirror first. I mean, that's the first thing I would say, because I've made a tremendous amount of mistakes in my ascent to where I am today, but I've actually learned from them. And one of the things personally for me that I stopped doing to myself is I stopped being the victim. If you want a seat at the table, like I was saying before, you got to earn it. And how do you earn it? By showing numbers. Show
Right.
your numbers. And how do you do that? Reporting. Manage the data, coach the people. I'll say that again. Manage the data and coach the people. So when I'm building the service drive BDCs, my best friend is the fixed ops director. Like before I even go downstairs and see the service manager, what have you, who are basically overloaded if they even have two minutes. But the fixed off director, who's like, usually, they're like Morpheus in their own little world in the corner somewhere. And they have like these mountains of reports. And I've learned everything that I've basically learned for service came from fixed ops. And I mean, the reporting that they have on EHG, ELR, gain time, lost time, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things, but it's up to the BDC manager accountability to go out and learn what you have to learn and learn the language. Not all sales managers, when we're talking about internet leads, are going to be the same. So try and communicate with somebody at their level, as opposed to saying, well, every time I go there, blah, 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 it's not working. Well, that's your, how can I say, that's your responsibility.
I take ownership.
Take ownership. Make it happen. I don't take excuses. Everybody understands numbers, right? So if you align your BDC with the objectives of the department that you're serving.
Bingo. Set the stage. Here are the number of calls that we typically get. Here's the expectation.
Correct. So awesome. Yeah, I would solve it at a systems level and improve communication. But before communication, this is a weird business that we're in. You're as good as your last month. That's what I've learned. Whether it's service, whether it's sales. So it's not
zero.
Yeah, not a lot of businesses that you start literally over at zero every month. So the idea is to just build what you can, but you got to align it. We can only do this collectively.
Cool.
So that's what I would say.
Jerry Davis. Hello, sorry for being late. It's okay. You're not late. You're fine. Having expectations and empowerment is key to a successful BDC. Greg Dudley, each contact is an opportunity regardless of the point or purpose of the contact. Each contact, that zero moment of truth, is your opportunity to shine and to reaffirm to that particular customer why you are the place to do business with. Tara Sullivan says X time is a wonderful for scheduling. Love using it. I think a lot of people use that, and it certainly generated a lot of business by keeping things organized. And we got Mark Rodriguez, service BDM should be listening to random inbound, outbound calls, inspecting expectations. Don't inspect it. you can't be surprised if it doesn't end up being what you want it to be. Now, to the involvement piece that we spoke about a moment earlier, Stan, how often do you see BDC departments involved in the weekly sales meetings?
Very, very rarely. I feel like that's the biggest disconnect. I try to preach it. I've been trying to preach it for years. And, I was thinking a lot about this in recent times. Everybody wants to get paid. Nobody wants to do the work. And I find that a lot in dealerships and different managers. And I find that it's a culture thing. Many years ago when I was at Teddy Nissan, that was a thing. We were in the meetings 3 times a week. We were, they had daily meetings at 8:30. We were in the meetings. We would bring bagels and we would role play. The salespeople would role play with the BDC on a phone script. The BDC would role play with the salespeople on how to take it up. And it was fun. We had a culture around it. When we ran a direct mail piece or when we ran a campaign for the month, everybody knew what was going on. It was a culture in the store, something similar to what Wendy was talking about a few minutes ago. I don't see enough of that. In fact, I find like I see less of that. Like I said, everybody wants to get paid. Nobody wants to work. And it's really sad. And there's that disconnect no matter what. Everybody just wants appointments. I'm finding dealers now, they just want to get people in front of them. They don't really care about the metrics. They don't care how you do it. I'm even finding some dealers going the wrong way with a lot of things, with getting people in the door and how they're advertising. So it's a shame, but that's unfortunately where our industry is. So we have to adjust. It all starts with the owner. It all starts with the general manager, somebody that's truly running the store, that's truly involved. I've seen stores with great cultures. I've seen stores with terrible cultures. I can tell you all the stores that I know that sell over 500 cars a month, they all have great cultures. That's the one big common thing they have. The smaller stores, they're struggling because, like I said, people want to get paid. They don't want to work. It's really just the most, it's terrible. And I see it now too. Whenever I travel to dealerships and I go in there to build a BDC or train a department, and, I don't see sales managers coming into the meetings. I don't see them sending salespeople into the meeting. So I'm building a department for the dealership, a profit department, and they're not even involving their people to really know what's going on. And it's a shame. It really, really is a shame. But, we just keep on plugging away,
Should be an integral part. Great point. Steve Apicella, it's not just if the dealer communicates with their customers after the vehicle sale, but how they communicate that earns the recurring customer connection or not. Phone solicitations, junk mail, and random text messages are the disconnected from reality solutions primarily leveraged today. More and more. I had a text the other day where the guy says, "Hey, is this so-and-so company?" Yeah. Do you need this or that? No. And that was it. But, all right, so somebody got paid to send a text to me that was totally random, accomplished absolutely nothing. There was no plan, because chances are that person was not in that regular meeting like should have been. But to continue with this, most customers that do buy a vehicle today don't return to their selling dealer afterwards. There's a lot of room to improve. Hashtag your dealer experience is before and after the sale. This should be one singular. Talks about zero moment of truth. Every opportunity is a moment to set yourself apart from everybody else. Great point, Steve. And Robert says, seat time is a great tool for service departments. Anybody work with seat time? You guys seen that?
Seat time?
Do me a favor, post the link in the thread to that, Robert. And Ian says, great example. BDCs are so key to a dealership success. There are no extra customers. And Merrill says, no hum. No hum. I'm not sure what that means.
I think they meant X time instead of C time. I'm looking at my keyboard. The two letters are next to each other. I think there's a typo.
Okay. Good point there. Mark Rodriguez, service BDC can control and limit number of waiters that can directly impact MPI revenue. It's funny. I talk to a lot of stores, and there are still a lot of them that say that half of their business just shows up. I mean, that's got to be one hell of a process to manage. And we're talking some big stores here too. But yeah, a properly executed BDC can definitely control the flow so that not everybody's showing up at the same time. Ian says process execution and long-term thinking is key. Jerry Davis, the BDC is a huge factor in CSI, aka customer supplied income. I like that. BDC needs to have strong process and inspect what they expect. And Ian says training should be every single day. You never stop. You're always reinforcing. To Reid's point, you're always looking at the numbers and you're always reinforcing that you're doing the numbers you should be doing, because if you follow the process, it's not rocket science, right? There's a lot of work that's gone into setting up the process. It's just a simple matter of following it. And Russell agrees with that, says every day. And he says, Shawn, well said, own it. Jerry Davis also, well said, Shawn, hero to zero. Now, so the meetings we agreed, that's a plus. If you're not doing it, start incorporating it into your weekly routine. Because the better you communicate with everybody on the team, the better they're going to represent you. And these are the people that are taking and making most of the phone calls in the building. There's still a lot of stores that don't have a BDC. And it's funny, when you talk about, you talk to people that have phone services that monitor incoming and outgoing phone calls where they don't have a BDC, you see crazy numbers. The amount of times that calls are dropped or misrouted, right? If I'm a customer calling in and I get transferred, by the third time I get transferred, I'm hanging up. I'm just going to call somebody else. So with BDC, where it's properly routed, you're not going to miss out on all those phone calls. You know, it's not that crazy. Now, low conversion of engaged leads to appointments. Wendy, talk to me about the, the logging and looking at the appointment ratios, the show ratios. Talk to us a little bit about that. What are some best practices there?
Okay. I think most times when we measure what our BDC does, we have the wrong KPIs in place. We're looking at the wrong numbers. We're constantly looking at a closing ratio with regard to sold to leads. And the BDC, unless they're doing unsold showroom traffic calls and generating B-back traffic, which nowadays the majority of the clients the dealers I work with anyway, do not. They want the relationship to stay with the sales department post a visit. So to me, the most important number is shows to leads, making sure you're isolating bad leads, but it shows to leads. What percentage of those leads actually walk through the door? So you have to look at a couple other things to figure out if it's not where it's supposed to be, then you start at the very beginning. Are they, like for me, it's what? Dials, sets, and shows, right? It's ultimately all about the shows with a BDC. So you have to, I mean, everybody says, well, why do they have to dial? Nowadays, they say, well, they don't have to do X number of dials. Well, you do if you're playing the law of, same as knocking on doors if you're outside sales or whatever. You have to knock on the 100 doors to get whatever it was back in the day when people did that door-to-door stuff. So if, say, for example, you have to pound the phone because you have to get a hold of enough people. You have to get a high enough engagement rate to be able to have the opportunities to convert those engagements to appointments. So nowadays, I think that texting is also very underutilized. If you ask Steve Ressler, if he's still in the audience there, 95% of texts are read within 5 minutes of being sent, and that's why he's a really big advocate, as am I, of videos and texting, virtual showroom visits for sales and service appointments, to increase the show rate and to let the person know what to expect when they get to the dealership, what to look for, faces to look for. If engagement is low, so first look at your engagement, right? How many people answered the phone, or replied to a text or an email, or called you back after an exciting call to action voicemail where you didn't give it all up in the call.
Yeah.
And they had a reason to call you back. So engagement rate. If that's broken, look at what you need to look at. Look at your voicemails. Look at are you calling around the time the lead was sent in? Are you calling a couple of times at least in the very early stages of the lead? And then once you get them, the next big one is contacted to appointed. If you get somebody on the phone and you do not convert that person to a solid appointment, then it is your absolute responsibility and it's your job to turn that call over live to a manager or another person in the department or somebody to either overcome the objection if you don't know how to, or lend a second voice that's going to give the same information that you gave, because when, two or more people say it the same way, it must be true. That's what's going to happen at this dealership. Sounds good. I trust them. Let them sell me an appointment, right? We buy from people we trust. We sell appointments.
Yeah.
So if you do not convert, and then the next big thing is it has to be a warm transfer. Let the BDR stay on the call and learn how to do it. Otherwise, you begin doing your job for them. They become complacent. Whenever they have a little bit of heat in the phone call, they're going to turn it over because they know they're going to get the show credit, but you're going to do the work and convert the person to an appointment. So if they don't stay on the call, I don't give them credit. And then it's also a learning opportunity, right? And then show. The next big thing is, okay, you think you set a solid appointment. You set same day, next day, maybe the third day, but you have to create a sense of urgency. You have to have it today, tomorrow, next day to the furthest outside. The rest of them, you schedule a call back. I'm sorry, but I can't schedule you out that far, et cetera. Call them back in a couple of days. When it comes to the appointment, now you're feeling all warm and fuzzy inside because you set an appointment. Big deal. You didn't get an opt-in to text. It was a phone up. You don't have an email address. And you wrote down the number wrong when the customer gave it to you, right? So then when it comes time, then you don't confirm the appointment. Then the the time comes and, I got 5 appointments today. And maybe one shows up. Why? And then you go to call the next day, if you remember. You didn't confirm it. You didn't call them when they were 10 minutes late. You didn't continue to call them that day to make sure they were on their way, that nothing happened to them. They didn't get lost. They weren't sitting in another dealership. But you didn't get all those other things. So you're kind of, up the proverbial creek. So you absolutely have to make sure you get everything. Jackie, how many things do we have in the CRM, guys? Jackie, Jeremy, because it was a phone up and we didn't get the last name. And if we got the opt-in to text, did we get an email address? Because maybe we'll get lucky and the last name is in the email address, right? If we analyze our email addresses. Or we got an opt-in to text. Oh, by the way, John, what's your last name? Right? If you forget to get it. So there's so many things. But to me, it is all about the shows first. It's engagement. You got to engage. Then once you engage, you have to convert probably 7 out of 10 calls to an appointment. And then you should absolutely, if you're really rocking it, you should have a 70% show to set rate. And then the closing is up to the department in my book.
Awesome. I want to get to a couple of comments before I interject here. Ian says, so true, Stan, great points as usual. And any thoughts on after sales from the panel? After sales through the BDC? I think that'd be a great opportunity for not captured VSCs, for not captured service plans. Now, I know, there's some companies, Toyota Care and things like that, but not every company offers that. And I know with VSCs, for instance, 7 out of 10 people that walk out of the box haven't bought one, and there is really no plan in place to capture that. I want to get to a couple more comments, and then we'll bounce back to that. And I want to also just address the sales department wants the salesperson to stay with that customer after the sale. So Ian, we'll get to that in just a second. Johnny Canizaro, a successful BDC starts with ownership. That's what we referred to the other day as the fish stinks from the head. A lot of owners see it as an expense and not an investment. There's a new wave coming, and Russell says, yes, sir, Stan, speed of the pack is set by the leader. And yeah, Robert did mean X time. I saw C time, but hey, you know what? There's so many technology companies today that pop in and out of our business, most of which we invite. So you never know. There could be a new name that somebody hasn't seen before, and that's okay. Steve says, must measure engagement of internet leads in order to measure success. It all starts with engagement. If you don't have engagement, you have nothing. Greg Dudley, single point of contact for each customer is what BDC is all about. Now, the only thing to add to what Wendy said before about sales wants the salesperson to stay with. Now, I've been in this business for 40, I think I'm going into my 43rd year now. Yes, I'm that old. And I've spent a lot of time in sales as well as service, as well as internet. And I hate to say it, but a lot of salespeople that I've met over the years don't really like spending a lot of time on the phone with the follow-up piece of it. And I'm a big believer in the team concept, okay? The problem I see is that if you have only one person that you're dealing with at the dealership, do people change hands? Do people change jobs at the dealer level? Yeah. So if you have one person that you're dealing with, that person leaves, now guess what? Oh, Paul's not there? Oh, now you've got to start all over again. Build rapport with somebody else, establish trust with somebody else. Whereas when I ran an aftermarket repair shop, everybody knew everybody. The customers knew all of the techs. They knew my assistant manager. They knew the service counter person. They knew the parts driver by name, and they knew their stories, so that when they came in, it was like they were visiting family, and they entrusted their money with us and their cars with us. To only have the salesperson follow up afterwards, that call may or may not happen unless they become friends with that person. Then it's a whole nother level of relationship. But I think in the overall big picture, the more you can develop a team atmosphere between your store and your customers, the more welcome they'll feel. Because when they come in, it's not just, I'm looking for Bob, who's this guy, who's that? It's like, hey, Wendy, how you doing? Stan, great to see you, man. Hey, Shawn, what's going on? Hey, is Reid here? Right, as opposed to, is Reid here? I'm here to see Reid. Anybody seen Reid? It's a whole different conversation. So that's my take on that, and we'll still get back to the VSC after sales thing in just a moment. Steve Rustler says text is number one, at least ahead of whatever's in number two. Russell agrees with that. Terry Torline, great topic, Paul. Customers want their questions answered. They want them answered. They want them answered quickly, honestly, and exactly what they asked. Steve Russell says, equation to track number of texts greater than number of calls plus number of emails. You got to have a system down if you're going to track it, and then you have to stick to it. And you have to look at those numbers on a regular basis. And if you're fortunate enough to have the software, you can detect patterns and trends so that you can catch problems before they become bigger ones, or accelerate your growth based on the data that you've looked at where you've seen the trends developing. Ian said, all great points, put in the work and hold the team accountable. Steve Rustler says, think about scheduling a mini phone appointment via text to get higher contact rate versus dialing for voicemail. That's a great point. If they know who you are and they're expecting some kind of communication, I would agree that most people would be more receptive to starting it off with a text conversation. I know my kids, it's quicker to get them on text. We have lots of phone calls. They call me regularly, but it always starts with a text conversation, and that's family. So now imagine all of these thousands of people that are not your family members, that you want them to bring their cars in. So it's got to start in the communication method that they prefer. Great point, Steve. Mark Rodriguez, Wendy brings up an important point about voicemails. Dealers need to be careful that the bulk of outbound calls are greater than 30 seconds in length. Otherwise, they run the risk of being flagged as possible spam. Great point. Because we get so many calls, and a lot of them end up being identified as spam when some of them aren't exactly spam. Now, to get back to the previous point about after sell, stamp. If customers come in, they buy a car, they go through the box, but they don't buy a VSC, they haven't bought a service a service plan or some of the other things that would add value to them. What's your feeling on after sell as it relates to BDC?
I feel like it's a good opportunity within a week to 3 weeks to follow up with those customers, find out how their vehicle is going, find out how their experience went, obviously, doing that follow-up call. And then, of course, you're asking, you obviously will get a recap of all the deals to see who bought a VSC, who didn't. And at that point, it's a good idea to start, trying to find out why they didn't buy it. For them, it might be, one of the objections might be maybe it was too expensive. At that point, depending on the dealership's F&I department, maybe they can increase their penetration by offering it at a discounted rate after the fact, depending on what your state laws are, of course. I feel like it's a great idea. I feel like it's also a revenue generating idea for those BDC reps that are actually doing it, because I feel like when they bring that customer back, or maybe even they don't have to bring the customer back, but maybe they can facilitate that sale with F&I. I feel like there should be a reason to make more money doing it that way, because we know finance managers, they're busy, they're doing their thing. They're not going to be calling back people, to try to resell them a VSC. So I do think it's a great opportunity. I think it should be included in people's pay plans. Actually, got me thinking a lot about that. Maybe it's something I should start pitching, to dealers when I'm training their BDCs. Maybe they can increase their pay plan by adding an extra $50 if they get that person back in to increase that warranty penetration. Big fan of it. Definitely a big fan of it.
And that can also be tied into the declined service calls.
Yes.
It's a very easy thing to do, because let's face it, if I've spent the time to go into the store to buy a car, what does everybody tell you about that mystical box, known as the F&I office? What do they tell you? Oh, that's the place where they're going to try to sell you a bunch of stuff. So people walk in with blinders, and they really cheat themselves. Because guess what? There are so many great products available, okay? There are great products, tire and wheel. Today, you got low-profile tires. You got shitty roads. I hate to say it. So if the customer rushes themselves through the box because they have the filters up, they're not going to buy anything, you're not going to sell me anything, well, then they've kind of shafted themselves, because guess what? The first pothole I hit in my BMW or other Highline car, where I not only blow out the tire, which you have to buy as a set, all right, unless the car is new, but I'm also going to blow out a wheel. How much is that? Could it be $1,000 or more easily? Some cars, right? What's the policy cost you? But because they went in like this, they never heard about it. So now after the sale has been made, and you've got a rep that they've already established some contact with the store, so they feel comfortable. The pressure's off now, because I already bought it. I made it through the box without buying a bunch of extra stuff. But now you can have the casual conversation. Hey, have you ever done this? Or, oh man, we got back from vacation. We had a pothole, and this is what it cost me. You'd be surprised. That happened to me too. Really? Man, I wish I had known about the policy that could have protected me from that. Because once the money's spent, they forget all about it. But when they cash in on the benefit, forget about it. That's priceless. That's when they tell everybody they know what a wonderful place you have, because you took the time to look out for their best interest. It wasn't about selling them a bunch of crap they don't need. It was about looking out for their interest and making sure that their ownership experience was one that was protected, right? They'll remember that they didn't have to spend $1,000 or $800 because they had proper coverage. So yeah, oh, you got a big fan here, Wendy. Diane Anderson says, Wendy, you are spot on. And Tara Sullivan said, Wendy, you rock. Throws up a fire emoji. Jerry Davis, Wendy is right. It snowballs quickly. And Albert Thompson, great points. Make sure you're making the follow-up call to confirm. Great point, leads me to the next one. See if they are on the way. Make sure not lost. Why do the next day call just to check a box instead of a call 1 hour before, 10 minutes after they're late? Great stuff, Paul Meijer and Wendy Reeves. Here's an example. I mystery shop stores, and a particular store that I mystery shop, they sent me an email confirmation of my appointment the following day. I never got that confirmation because it went into spam. Now, I know to check my spam folder all the time because I live in email, but guess how many customers do? Not that many. It's no different than Facebook Messenger. When somebody sends you a message that you don't know, how many people know to look for message requests? Not that many. So in just that process, I never got confirmation. And the next day when I was supposed to go, I was a no-show. Of course I was a no-show. I wasn't planning on going in for the appointment. You know, when I got that, where were you phone call? 6 o'clock at night. My appointment was for 8:30 in the morning. How's that going to help me? So great point, Albert. Reid, setting the appointment is great, but now let's talk about the preparation for the appointment, the confirmations. Let's talk, give us some best practices on what you're seeing out there.
Well, you know, I learned from cars.com a long time ago that the east to west appointment has a 22% uplift in show ratio versus the north to south appointment. So what I train on is that you should set at 115 or 145 instead of the 130. That would be one of the better practices. Another one that I think is really important, and I think somebody mentioned it earlier, was the mental driving of the customer to the dealership. Even if they know where it's located, actually walking them through so that they know, look, we're right there where the big, huge flag is. Yeah, just park right up front, walk through the front door. When you get to the dealership, I'll be expecting you and be waiting for you personally. You know, I think that mentally driving them to the dealership is another thing. Again, yeah, sending it on an email confirmation, text confirmation, whichever the customer would prefer, is very important. And again, one of your priorities of calling, first and foremost, is in the top 4 is both missed appointment and appointment confirmation, because you spend all this time trying to schedule an appointment, and we naturally miss 66 to 44% don't show, and then we don't take the time to call the missed appointment. So I think that's really crucial when it comes to setting appointments also. You know, that last but not least, but you know, the greatest mind is what is that? Isn't as good as the faintest ink. I forgot what the saying is, but getting them to write it down. You know, hey, I've got some important information for you. Please write down my name, put down my number. You know, and getting them to write it down, I think, is really important because, you know, if it wasn't written, it was never done.
I remember everything I write down.
Yeah, exactly. So setting a solid appointment is definitely crucial to the rest of the step, because you can do everything right, but if you don't set that confirmation, you don't get a solid appointment out of the customer where they're committed mentally, you know, that they might, on the high end of our industry average, not show up.
Yeah. Now, while we're on paper, I just want to bring a short message here. Let's see here. All right. This is something, paper is something dealerships have way, way, way too much of. When you're in and out of the service departments, how many stacks of papers do you see? Who's been in the closet where there are boxes and boxes of papers and you can't find what you're looking for? And that all has a tangible cost. So I think if you're a dealer, you'll appreciate this message.
Hey guys, this is Caesar. I'm at a GMC and Mazda dealer here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And here's the problem that we solve. Boxes of repair orders and parts invoices. Rooms full of repair orders and all parts invoices. Can you imagine trying to find a repair order in these file cabinets? It takes time. It takes you an hour to find just a repair order. We save the dealership time, money, and lots of space with our scanning station. This can go away. This will go away. I'm going to show you how we do this. And here's our scanning station, and I'm going to show you how easily to scan repair orders. You click on the scanning icon, brings up the repair order screen. Click on repair orders, click on scan repair orders, and we're going to scan 60 pages a minute, front and back, and we're going to read the repair order number off of the repair order. In this case, we're using the barcode technology. There's the arrow number's there, and you're done. This now has been converted to a PDF, and now anyone in the dealership can see the contents of the repair order. Pretty simple, easy to use. That's our scanning station.
Dealers, you spend a lot of money on scanning, a lot. Look at your payables and see what it's costing you. Want to learn more? Call me, 203-257-4727. Shawn,
Yes,
process in follow-up as it relates to appointments. What Reid was saying, he raised some great points there. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Absolutely critical. I think BDC managers that are out there, I just want to take a few seconds to just go back to Wendy's segment before, like fire. That's all I have to say. So if anybody, when we were talking earlier about having a seat at the table and why BDCs don't necessarily get invited, I would encourage any BDC manager or BDC practitioner to go back and look at Wendy's segment again, because absolutely everything that was in there is exactly why we're not getting invited, right? So fix those pain points and you'll get invited. So I just wanted to kudos to Wendy. That was fire. With regards to confirming appointments, absolutely. I mean, listen, first things first, it's all about coaching your people, right? If you have a high no-show, it's because we didn't add value. The BDC, when you're on the phone, you have to add value to the call, just like an F&I has to add value to the products they're selling. I'm a big Eric Thomas proponent, and he says one thing that I've incorporated into my training, and be phenomenal or be forgotten. If I'm calling you, Paul, right now, and I'm going to confirm an appointment, and I'm super flat. Hi, Paul. How are you? This is Shawn from ABC Company. I'm just calling. Like, come on, dude. Yeah. I'll be there. Like, that's not even going in my phone, right?
Gotta be enthusiastic, brother. Gotta be enthusiastic.
Correct. And I'm a tough pill to swallow with regards to my coaching style, but the numbers don't lie. So
people do.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes. You got to be intense. You got to be deliberate on the phone. And I mean, listen, when I was coming up and I was working as an appointments coordinator, they just kept moving me around the building because, motion creates emotion. I was standing up and I was almost not yelling, but there was so much enthusiasm. And clearly you could see why I'm doing it now. I'm always speaking with my hands because I'm just so into what I'm doing in that moment. And this is the kind of training that you absolutely need to but it needs to be transitioned over to the people on the phone. Because think about it, and I say this all the time. If you're going to take phone work, you're accountable. That's number one. Okay? So if you're going to take some phone work, you have to remember, we have 5 senses. You lose almost all of them when you're talking on the phone, except for the sense of you're hearing them, right? So your job now becomes, with all the senses that you have lost, how do you heighten the one that is left?
Right.
That's
Right.
what the job now becomes. So like Reid was saying before, and I made it a point to, you have to properly be able to articulate and illustrate into their mind. They have to be able to paint a picture in their mind by the words that you speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So yeah, I mean, confirming the appointments is important. And I just want to go back real quick. The
So
transition.
we're gonna run over, by the way. I just want to let everybody know that.
The transition between sales and service is absolutely critical. I think that's where we're doing an absolutely terrible job because we've created these silos in the dealership. But I think that's the strength of the BDC. The BDC is there to kind of bridge the gap and have a smoother transition. Pre-book that first appointment in 6 to 8 months, or if it's a Mercedes 1 year or what have you. Let's get into this. Validate the information, because Steve was dropping some big stuff about texting and whatnot, but garbage in, garbage out. So if we're not calling the after sales, like Ian was alluded to, and taking that opportunity to updating information, not just update it, but I think Stan was saying it. Ask the customer, which way would you like us to communicate with you?
Hello.
I think X-Time has this awesome feature in the back, and I'm not promoting X-Time. It's just I've used it so much, but X-Time has this amazing feature where it just says preferred method of contact. So when you're going into the customer's screen, it just pops out. So what are you doing sending an email? It says it right here in black and white. Text the client, right? So it's to communicate with the customer in the manner that they wish to be communicated with.
Robert Allen Carvel puts it best: we are not reinventing the wheel, just perfecting it. He also says, I recommend our customers take their technicians out to lunch. Pros and cons on that one. I'm not going to go down that road, but it is an interesting concept for sure. And Jerry Davis says, it takes a village. Everyone needs to be striving for the same goals, 100%. Greg Dudley, setting up custom processes in your CRM is paramount in today's world. No two are exactly the same, so you need to be able to adapt for that. And Steve Apicella says, push notifications to your customer smartphones attached to actionable engagement have a much higher engagement rate than text messages and phone solicitations. Why? Because they're seen as safe. They're coming from your phone, not just from some random text. However, many do not know how to create that more desired environment. All customers should have intuitive access to all their purchased F&I products on the smartphone, and by natural extension, to be able to learn and purchase any missed F&I products in that same digital environment. A solution exists. F&I should be, oh, it cut off the message, so I can't see the end, but F&I should not be limited to just at that moment or just before, because a lot of people do watch videos. I mean, look at the video stats. They're up and going through the roof. If I learn a lot of things on my own by watching videos. Before I buy stuff, I watch videos. Before I bought this Fitbit, I watched a bunch of videos. Which one do I get? Do I get an iPhone? Do I get a Fitbit Sense? What do I get? I probably watched more videos than I should have, but guess what? I'm extremely happy with what I bought based on the videos I watched to lead me to that. So he's got a product that does that. Wendy, you have your hand up? Or were you saying amen? And you're muted right now.
I want to add something really quickly, because, and that's the great thing about these shows and all the feedback and the questions, is it makes my creative juices start flowing. And I know you guys are the same thing. It's like mind blowing. It's like all these ideas. Yeah, exactly. So what about, like, back in the day, we had the evidence manuals at our desks as salespeople, right? So what about a digital frame sitting on the desk that scrolls pictures of the after sale products, so they get a preview of vehicles with the various things on them or whatever before they go into the box, so they got something to look at that's facing right at them while they're sitting at the desk while the salesperson went to, the management desk. Anyway, that's all.
Plant the seed. There are always mixed thoughts on that, because the desk is afraid that if the customer sees that, it's not going to be presented in the right way, and that the customer then will poo-poo it when they go into the box. But there are ways around it. Personally, I would craft videos of somebody having a blowout. Real world, it happens. It happens all the time. So now, maybe you're not selling them something, but guess what? If they see somebody have a blowout and get out of the car, and maybe that just plants the seed. So when they see that point of sale material, when they go into the box, the F&I office, maybe they're a little bit more receptive to that now. Mark Rodriguez says, Paul, any and all salespersons who got their start during the pandemic price hikes are in for a rude awakening when inventories rise and they have to build value. You're absolutely right. This is the perfect storm that we've enjoyed in the car business, but those people that had to earn it the old-fashioned way are not going to be as well versed in it. So there's going to be some definite awakening happening. Great point, Mark. And Steve Rossler says, what are your thoughts for BDC doing virtual meetings with customers, credit app interviews as an example? Great point, Steve. Stan, take it away, man.
So, actually, I like that point that Steve made. I think that it allows us to build our skill sets. We're doing a credit app with someone over the phone. We're asking questions. We're getting to know people. We're able to answer more questions the more that we do this. So, really good point. On the downside of it is if you're handling too many leads and you're in a super fast-paced environment, sometimes it makes it very difficult to do it so personalized. That's why I've always had a hit or miss with video engagement, with video emails. I've known that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you have time and sometimes you don't. But at the same time, I think that the technology is there. Going back into texting, I think texting is really important. I think texting will let you know right off the bat by the way that a person responds to you.
Or not.
Further or not. Yeah, exactly. If you can go further, I've done texting campaigns where I've been cursed out many times. It's happened, and then right off the bat, you already know that you're not going to be able to do something with that. So it allows you to kind of like clean your work plan and go to the next. But it certainly works very well in conjunction with making phone calls. But at the end of the day, it just all comes down to accountability and process. What kind of process are we putting in place? How will the store management feel about us working a certain process? Because remember, we're in an industry that doesn't have any egos, right? As you said,
no, not the car business.
So so all those things come to play.
Great stuff. Steve Rossler says personalized videos the day of the appointment increases show rates. Absolutely. Everybody, who doesn't love a good video? And Diane Anderson, why aren't they scanning the docs? There are a lot of stores. I challenge you to walk into 100 dealerships, 100. You pick the state, you pick the city, doesn't really matter. And you'll see how many boxes, crushed boxes. I know from personal experience, in a suit and tie, in the heat of the summer, having to go find a copy of a document in the attic where they stored all these friggin' boxes. I was sweating like crazy, cursing up and down. I was not in a good mood after that fishing expedition. And what turned out was the document wasn't even in the box. After moving 6 boxes to get to the crushed one where the document was supposed to be, it wasn't there. So why aren't they? They really should. And that's why I put the video in here. Robert says, I use that at car dealers, saves paper. And Erica says, Stephanie Wedgeworth, great BDC trainers. You guys are all awesome. Diane Anderson, Shawn, I'll tell my staff, why do you want to sound like other BDRs? Say, do something to set yourself apart. Across the board, whatever your position is at the store, always do whatever you can to set yourself apart. Dan Lombardi, bravo, Shawn, and Robert Allen Carvel. Paul, if you are saying not sure to have customers take techs out to lunch, you actually want the tech, you want that tech on your shop. It's not always the tech that I'm worried about. Sometimes it's the customer that I'm worried about. And I'll give you a perfect example. I was running a store, and this woman came in, and she said she had a particular noise from her car. All right. So we don't just listen to them. We don't just say, okay, there's a noise and then hope to find it. No. Sometimes we go for a test drive with the customer. So I'm running the store. I'm going for a test drive with the customer. It's a standard shift car. And we're having small talk. I'm not hearing the noise. Well, when you're approaching a stop, you hear it. I'm not hearing the noise. She starts talking about things that aren't car related. And the next thing I know, there's a hand on top of my hand on the shift knob. At that point, I said, oh, I think I found the noise. We're going back now. So, Robert, that's a good reason to not take the tech or anyone to lunch. There's a line there that it should be close, but not always that close. Diane Anderson says, love it, Wendy. And Dan Lombardi, Shawn Armorer, X-Time does offer preferred contact, email or mobile or phone. Also, you can select a preferred service advisor. Yeah, that's right. I've seen that. So we covered a lot of great stuff here today. I want to thank you guys and gal for coming on the show and sharing some of this with us. Now, for those not connected to either of these folks on here, each one is tagged in the post. So I encourage you to click on their tagged name and connect with them and reach out to them. It all starts with a phone call, a conversation to see what they're about. There are probably some things discussed here this evening that some of you may or may not be doing, but it doesn't hurt to have an open mind. The conversation is free to see whether or not you're nailing it and there's no room for improvement, or perhaps there's one thing that you picked up that might help you in having more happy customers. And we all know that more happy customers means more revenue and more customers because they spread your word. Diane Anderson says, our first text to customer asks, what is your preferred way to communicate, email, text, or phone? You don't ask, you're never going to find out. And Robert Allen Carvel says, another great show. Thank you, Robert. This guy's a great supporter of the show. I have a lot of people that tune in every week, and a lot of people watch it on the replay. That's the great thing about the internet. It's here forever. So again, connect with each of these person on here. If we're not connected, please connect with me. If there's anything that that you'd like to learn more on, reach out to me. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Oh, we got a couple more. We got Tara Sullivan says, most of the time the preferred contact is already in the lead itself. That is correct. And Robert Allen Carvel says, more dollar signs. So thanks again. Everybody have a safe and productive week next week. And we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Ciao for
Good
now.
night. Take care, everybody.